Today we bring a visually stunning adventure film based on the true story of James Glacier, a meteorologist, and Amelia Wren, a widow balloon pilot who dreams of flying higher than anyone has ever gone before. Together, they embark on a perilous journey to fly a hot balloon to the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, in the 19th century, to collect data that will revolutionize our understanding of weather. The film begins high in the air, where a woman and man are struggling in a hot balloon against the harsh wind. Since throwing away all the dead weight doesn't help to keep the balloon floating, the husband jumps off to save his wife. This flashback comes back to life and haunts Amelia, who is already nervous about her coming back flight since the death of her husband more than 2 years ago. Her sister, Antonia, who's accompanying her, suggests Amelia that she should not fly if she's not feeling well. But Amelia is stubborn and says that she needs this flight to get over the past incident. It's the year of 1862, and most Londoners have gathered to see this historical scientific discovery take off. James isn't worried about the expedition, but his childhood friend and a fellow scientist, John True, is worried about the dark clouds hovering in the sky. James told him that he is confident on his calculations. His claim was backed by the greedy man who had invested his money on this launch to collect money from the audience. So no matter how much John worries, the balloon is taking off today. Amelia arrives at the launch late, but she creates quite a show for the audience, making the greedy man very happy, knowing that ticket sales, in fact, funded this expedition after all. She arrives by riding at the roof of her coach wagon in a very colorful circus dress. Then she jumps around the balloon, making jokes and forcing James to play along. She even brings her small dog to fly with her, ignoring the James protest. After giving the speech that how they would reclaim the British glory by breaking the French record of reaching the highest point of 23,000 feet, Amelia finally frees the balloon, giving James no time to finish taking notes and ground measurements. As soon as they flew just a few feet off the ground, she climbs to the balloon hoop and drops her dog off the balloon. With surprise, the dog was wearing a parachute all along and makes a safe landing as part of the show. As they fly over London and admire the magnificent view, James takes out his binoculars and watches over the British Science Society's building, remembering how all of his journey started. 2 years earlier, he and his friend James used to climb over the roof to watch another balloon take off successfully. Later, James asked the Science Society to fund his expedition so he can take a similar expedition for scientific discovery. But his offer was turned down as everybody in the audience laughed at him for thinking that weather can be predicted beforehand, as if he is a fortune teller. The insult even reaches James's parents, who were equally hurt by this news. Back in the present, Amelia changes her colorful clothes to nice, warmer clothes, while James, on the other hand, sends his first reading via a pigeon. As the balloon soared higher, they went into a cloudy area. Amelia sensed some danger and worries about the possibility of an upcoming storm. James, on the other hand, insists that his predictions don't indicate a storm, but the weather proves him wrong at the spot. Strong lighting appears around them along strong wind gust, started shaking the balloon intensely. James fell on the ground, hit his head, and started bleeding. James told to Amelia that it's time to abort the mission and go back, but Amelia refuses to land the balloon, saying that she knows how to get out of the storm, as they need to fly higher above the clouds rather than going down. While a sudden, intense wind gust shook the whole balloon, causing Amelia and James to fall of the basket, but they managed somehow to hold on to the hoop before another gust hits them again, causing Amelia left hanging onto one of the ropes. James tried to help her climb back, but he wasn't strong enough as the wind was working against him. So he tied himself to the basket before reaching his hand to Amelia and finally bringing her back on board. After getting back into the basket, Amelia started throwing the sandbags out so that the balloon could soar higher than the storm, leaving the clouds behind. As they went up, the storm turned into an absolute silence as a gentle beam of sunlight struck their faces. While in that moment of peace, they had to rearrange the ropes of the balloon to hold their position, doing that James a beautiful sight that he never experienced outside of book visions. During the feeling of happiness, the pair started screaming into the nothingness around them, as they never experienced that in a bustling city of London. Excited by this feat, James rushed to his apparatus and started taking the readings. In the meanwhile, Amelia was struck by a flashback into her last fight with husband, during which the husband died. After losing her husband, she locked herself in the house and started drinking heavily. They kept for more than 2 years until recently, some weeks ago, her sister, Antonia, got tired of seeing her like this and dragged her out of her house to a fancy party that she has been invited to. Amelia was not having a great time at the party, since all men were afraid to approach her because of her reputation, all except one. James decided to approach her and started chatting with her before he revealed his real intentions. He needed a co-pilot for his expedition, to explore the sky to prove the prediction of weather was possible. Amelia quickly realized that James had sneaked into the party as he wasn't invited. She usually wouldn't care about someone's social status, but she didn't like the fact that he lied to her at first place. James gave her a heart-wrenching speech about how much this discovery could mean for humanity. So Amelia decided to work with him. Later, when Antonia got this news, she called her sister out for it, telling her that she's still having issues in her life because of the past incident. Back into the present, Amelia is recovering from her thoughts when James asks about her husband, but she refuses to talk about it. While they're talking, they experienced something they've never encountered before. A group of butterflies suddenly appeared from nowhere. James is particularly amazed by this scene, as he never thought that butterflies can fly this high. Touched by this serene moment, Amelia tells him about her husband's love for nature, and with tearful eyes, she thanks him for not pushing her to talk about the past incident. Once again, Amelia started thinking about the past scenarios that brought her to this trip. After recalling her sister's worries, she decided to change her mind about the trip. So the following day, she went to the British Society building to let James know that she won't join him for the expedition, as she won't fly on a balloon again in her life. While entering the building, she deliberately ignored the fact that women were not allowed to enter the Science Society building. Later in the evening, James went to visit his parents at their home, giving his mom the news about Amelia, but also keeping it from his father, as he didn't want to hurt his father because he's suffering from dementia. Even after the illness, he still remembers how to operate a telescope that James had gifted him. So, for the upcoming trip, he gifted his Sama binocular and asked him to see the world from it when he reaches the sky. Back at the balloon, which is starting to get covered in frost as the altitude rises, James asked Amelia to help him take notes. The numbers this time were thrilling, as little by little they were climbing higher, and when they reached 23,000 feet, they celebrated as they've finally broken the French record. Now they were officially the people who flew higher than anybody else in the entire human history. After shaking hands and thanking Other for this great opportunity, James released another pigeon with the findings and asked Amelia to put on some warmer clothes. However, James didn't bring any warm clothes for himself to keep balloon light-weighted. After hearing this, Amelia wanted to land the balloon to avoid him from freezing to death. James talked her out of it, saying the importance of this trip's findings is more important for humanity than their own lives. Amelia then recalls that indeed she find peace in flying. So she accepts his offer, but under one condition, that she would be the one to decide when it becomes too much to keep going. James agrees to it, and they throw out bags of sand. Meanwhile, a new flashback of the night when Amelia changed her mind about the trip came to life. John visited her out of his free will, telling her that the trip is worth the risk, as he showed her all of James' research where he had even detailed it to the pictures of snowflakes. John also admits that sometimes he can be wrong. He said it would snow tonight, and it didn't yet. However, he also uncovered some remarkable truths. He told her that it's up to her to advance for the science. After he left, Amelia visited her husband's grave to think about the expedition, and she decided to join James when his prediction came true, and it started snowing. Back in the present, the entire balloon is frosted along with the people. James decided to send a pigeon with the readings, but it falls as soon as it tries to fly out. With his last pigeon dead, no one would know about his location and current readings. If something happened to them, James started freaking out. Amelia tried to stop him by throwing out some of their belongings. She points out that because of the altitude, his nose started bleeding, as it's a sign of hypoxia. The lack of oxygen is affecting his brain. She wants to descend, but James wants to risk his life for science as her husband did. So Amelia slapped him hard, telling him the real story that their balloon was ripped apart midair. No matter how many things they threw out, they couldn't maintain the altitude. So her husband jumped of the balloon to save Amelia. After hearing the truth, James was left shocked and apologized to her and agrees that it's time to go back. Amelia pulls the rope to open the gas valve, but nothing happens as the valve itself is frosted and could not be opened. So after reminding James to stay awake and not let hypoxia take over him, she decided to open the valve manually by climbing to the top. This proved to be a difficult task, as the frostbite started to eat her fingers, but she pushed herself to keep on going until she slips and falls off, leaving her hanging upside down from the balloon. Thinking about her husband's sacrifice, Amelia decided that she can't let his sacrifice go vain, so she puts herself together and begins the climb again. This time, she tied the rope with her waist in case she slips again. On the other hand, James fell unconscious by the time Amelia makes it to the top. She tries to push the valve, but it was stuck, so she must risk standing up and kick it. This doesn't work so she takes off her boot and stick it between the valve. This strategy worked, but just after that, she fell unconscious and started falling off the balloon. Meanwhile, back at Ground Fortune, Amelia's family and the members of British society started worrying because they haven't heard from them and it's past the estimated time of arrival. They tried to stay optimistic while waiting for their return. Meanwhile, at the balloon, Amelia finds herself hanging on the rope that she tied on her waist, proving it to be a lifesaver move. She makes it back to the basket by swinging herself. She tries to wake James up. At first, there was no response, and she thought maybe she lost him too, but thankfully, after lots of shaking, he eventually regained conscious. He takes his final reading before taking care of her frostbitten hands while pausing to catch the fresh snowflakes for study. Afterwards, they were sighting and waiting for the balloon to reach ground safely. While chatting, Amelia told James that she has reached a conclusion to her sister's question that why she wanted to fly back again. She wanted everything she have lost to have a meaning. After hearing this, James mentions some of his discoveries from the expedition. Importantly, the beauty he's seen can never be matched with the illustrations on book. While they were coming closer to each other, Amelia noticed that the snow isn't falling. It's just hovering in the air. This means that they're traveling at the same speed as of the falling snowflakes, that the balloon is falling apart. After opening the valve with the rope, her shoe fell down. They immediately started throwing stuff outside the basket to remove weight, including jackets they were wearing, James, tools. Even after removing all the weight, it wasn't enough. For a brief moment, they lost all the hopes of survival. But then an idea struck James. Both of them climbed onto the balloon ring. Then he cut the basket ropes. The balloon was still descending dangerously. So Amelia, though, of making a similar sacrifice as her husband did, but James stopped her in time and told her he has another idea. He pulls his knife again and cuts all the ropes that were keeping balloon in shape. After cutting them all, the balloon transformed into a parachute. It now began descending gently, but it was still quite a trip for them, as the balloon made quite rough landing and smashed through some trees and made James fall. Then it drags Amelia through the ground until she was forced to fall unconscious for some time. When she wakes up, she rushed to find James and started screaming his name. She met him halfway as he was also looking for her. Together, they helped each other get back on their feet and return home. It was later estimated that they had reached a height of 37,000 feet that day. It's a 7-mile high journey of many ups and downs. Their success made it to the news and was seen by James's proud parents. The expedition's findings proved that their layer in the atmosphere, this discovery, further led to the first ever weather forecast system that we still use to this date. This discovery led James the respect among his peers. After spending some quality time with her sister and Ananthi, Amelia and James built a new balloon and went on to a new expedition.